is here. I'll actually ask you to call the roll. I just look around.
Didn't know if you did that at this meeting.
Yeah, we tended.
Councilor Narcoitz?
Present.
Councilor Tacey?
Here.
Councilor Labarge?
Present.
Councilor Murphy?
Here.
Mayor Higgins?
Present. Okay, so we have a number of agenda items. I don't think you have any minutes to approve. I think we have to unearth some that Chris may have done, and I apologize for that. But the first thing we want to do is talk about city property rules and issues. And I'm going to ask Councilor Narcoitz to help me with this, and Councilor Murphy, and actually Councilor Mary Labarge will remember this too. When we moved the city property function into city council, city property used to be a separate committee, and it was moved into city council, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And so city council has been, when you sign off on the utility contracts and other things, you're doing that in the capacity as covering the things that city property used to cover. Okay, so I'm bringing this up because there's a couple issues that are going to be coming up, and I just want to remind people that that is part of the role of the city property committee. Okay, and your role as finance committee. So and I thought this made it on the agenda, and I apologize if it didn't. And this is a it's not a lease, and it's not a long. And I think it's actually a trial use, even though the tenant says long-term use. Do you have this paper in front of you?
We got it.
Okay. We had a request from Fresh Pasta, and Paul Malani is here, to use the cobblestone area outside their back door as another dining area in essence. And we have a policy that allows for that, but it needs to come through this body. In the old days, it probably would have gone to transportation and parking, but when that ordinance was redone, I think all of their responsibility for the actual sort of more long-term use came to you. So I asked David Pomerantz to handle this because he's handled a number of these other city property issues, so he's here today. But I think basically what they want to do is set up some tables out there and give it a try as sort of an outdoor cafe in the back. Okay? So Mr. Malani is here and Mr. Pomerantz is here. I'd first suggest that you hear from Mr. Pomerantz, and then you can ask any questions from Mr. Malani.
Make a motion to recognize.
Well, we typically have done that in committee, but if we want to be more formal, that's okay. But let's hear from Mr. Pomerantz.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. The Mayor asked me to review the application that had been put in by the restaurant for use of a small cobblestone area behind their building, which is at the corner of Masonic and Main Street. And I have some pictures I'd just like to pass around while I'm briefly explaining what we've got here. The application, which I looked at the end of last week, was for the establishment of a sort of an exterior eating area with some tables, flowers. The application talks about bollards that would be put up around this cobblestone area. I think it's a seasonal use of the space. I think it was May to October. And I went over on Friday, looked at the area, took the pictures that you have that I'm passing around, and I can't obviously comment on the operational side of things, but as far as the location, the main point that comes to me that I would like the committee to look at and address this afternoon is potential life safety issues. The cobblestone area is about 18 by 20 feet, small. It attaches to the back of the building, and it sits right at the edge of the sidewalk and the driveway where people are pulling in from both sides of Masonic Street. That said, again, I can't comment on the operational side of the application, but as far as the location, I would like to see at least 4 steel concrete filled bollards placed at the edge of the cobblestone where it meets the asphalt of the parking lot. So people swinging into the parking lot from 2 different directions would have an adequate buffer between them and people sitting on the patio space. That's the main concern that I have, that I saw that should be addressed. Councilor?
Yes, Councilor Casey and I just took a walk over there. He's already been there, but I've eaten there many times. But I needed to see the back part of it. The only concern I have, which the mayor has the pictures, is when you're coming down the sidewalk and when you're coming in on the right-hand side of the driveway itself coming into it, there's like a curve, right, Eugene? And cars do come in there. I've seen cars go in there. What do we do to protect that part as far as safety?
Are you talking the sidewalk edge, or are you talking the driveway edge?
Well, it's like a curb. Where's the picture?
It's a 90-degree curve right here. Here's the curbing coming in. You have the curbing coming up from Masonic Street
Yes.
in this corner right here. The cobblestones, who installed the cobblestones? Did the city do that?
I believe the city did it many years ago. We own up to the lot.
Yep. Okay. And deliveries, delivery trucks go back there?
Why don't we have Mr. Maloney answer some of those questions?
Yeah, they do, but the cobblestone area really is not used. It's mostly used for people to
This
park,
would be the first
wait
Yeah,
for
we
something.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we maintain it now as far as keeping it clean, shoveled, et cetera. So what we're trying to do really is to really improve the site. I mean, we've been thinking about this for years, and I've talked about the government about it because it's really not very sightly back there. And we had talked years ago about putting plants and stuff when they moved dumpsters in, and that never worked out. But now I think by being able to put some tables out there and surrounding it with these, you know, bollards and plants and plantings that will hide the recycling dumpster, which is the worst part of it. And we have like 6-foot, you know, trees along that side, et cetera. And then where people come in, the egress is actually next to the building, along the sidewalk. So people wouldn't even be walking in. In fact, there'd be fewer people walking across the cobblestone area then than there is now. You know, the people walk across it from their cars and stuff. So.
I think the concern I have is the little curbing part of it, the way it turns in. Dave has the picture there. I have seen cars come in and exit in that way, and that is so close.
Well, they have to use basically where the curb cut is. I mean, that's, you know, and that is far enough away. I mean, if they go off a foot or so and bump over the curb, I mean, they're still not going to hit the
I think David Norton would. Is that on the same issue?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out on the plan, I just was gonna ask Mr. Pomerantz, the plan calls or shows some raised bollards. It looks like along the parking lot edge. So are you saying you want them on the parking lot edge, but also right around the, you know, the corner on the parallel to Masonic Street as well? Or
Yes.
you were just saying you wanted to see 4 bollards. I don't show a number of bollards, I show 2 bollards and flower boxes, and then really just flower boxes
Right.
along the sides.
Well, excuse me,
Sure.
if I may butt in here. When I marked the ballards on there, I didn't know where they were supposed to be.
Okay.
I just,
So you're proposing, how many bollards are you proposing?
I'm thinking that we probably put 4 or more along the parking lot side, because that's the most dangerous part. If somebody jumps the sidewalk and runs into the thing, that's an accident.
Well, they could do that on the Main Street side.
Yeah.
too.
They can do that right on Main Street. We have tables all over Main Street, so.
Of course, to install these bollards, you've got to go 4 feet deep. And I'm curious as to utilities and stuff, and what might be back there.
Well, we'll call it dig safe.
Well, yeah.
So these would be removable bollards?
I was hoping that we could remove them during the winter,
Right.
you know, for
Right.
snow removal and stuff, but, you know.
That's
that-
what makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
So what's that?
if that's the style that we want to go with, then we could plant them or install them 4 feet deep, similar to what's used on the bike trails.
Right.
So the ambulance crews can access them and take the top of the half off and then go down the bike trails.
So you're okay with a condition that includes a certain number of bollards that are at your expense, obviously? And that you're okay with a certain, that they meet the safety criteria that the city sets? And you are proposing to also put in flowers and other plantings to make it look nicer, which I very much appreciate. I did see some of your staffers have back on the lovely white, I think they're in the picture too, in the lovely white lawn chairs, looking pretty happy. And so you'd be comfortable with those conditions.
Oh, yeah.
And you want, my understanding was, correct me if I'm wrong, that you wanted to try this for a year and see if it makes some sense. Is that correct?
Yeah, and, you know, I'm hoping that it's, you know, it's gonna draw business. Obviously, we'll pay more taxes, and, you know, we all should benefit.
Yeah, I mean, the tricky part is that it's an asset of the city, so we need to figure out some value for it. And then the value to be offset by the improvements, I think, that the committee could approve it subject to negotiations through the city solicitor and the proper legal vehicle, which is probably a license and not a lease.
And what about the liability?
They have to assume all the liability. Yeah.
But excuse me, isn't it the same as it is for the tables out front?
Right, whatever the
Yes.
sign off is there, right.
So,
And this would be, so in October, you would remove these potted evergreens?
yeah, everything would go.
I mean, they have to be plowable, would you agree, Council?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I asked, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he wants it plowable too because he brings his deliveries in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, plus I just want it clean back there.
Right.
Were there any fire egress issues? Have they ever been asked what their, you know, because they,
That's a good question. We can check with fire. Did you talk to fire?
No, we haven't, but the fire escapes come down on
Go further
Masonic Street and then also farther down the alley.
You still have a rear exit that would come out that way, and you'd have an immediate exit. Former firefighter Pomerantz, do you have any opinion on that?
I didn't have time yet, but it was on my list to talk with Chief Duggan to see if he had any issues about, you know, getting apparatus into the back of that building if there are bollards up. And I just haven't had time to check with him yet.
I would assume these flower boxes would be on wheels.
Actually, we were gonna put some cables through them so people don't steal. We've been having our potted trees stolen.
Yeah. Well, that's,
Yeah, so we're getting some more cables and, you know, stuff like that, but we're gonna try to figure a way to do it so it looks good.
Similar to like the hotel does where they cable up the tables at night and cable up the
Yes.
other
Yeah.
stuff.
I just want to say, I think this is a wonderful idea, and I cannot see where there would be a problem doing this. I think, and I give all the business owners and restaurant owners here in our city, even in Florence, the opportunity to go ahead and expand your business. I mean, the economy was bad. Everybody's been, you know, hurting there for a while. And I think as counselors, it is our job to, you know, help promote businesses here in the city and give them, you know, a better place to go ahead and run their businesses. I've eaten there many times, many restaurants on Main Street, and I love to sit outside, and I think that would be wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you.
Council Casey.
I think it's a great idea. I just want to see what they have for what the bollards are going to be like.
Could you?
That's why I'm supporting this.
Yeah.
I think it's a good. It looks like hell there right now. No offense. I mean,
No, I know
it does.
That's why we want to do something.
Yeah. But on this corner, is there a way to clip that corner a little bit?
Yeah.
Corner back, you know, put that on a little bit of an angle. Because that curbing,
It bothers
when
us.
you were sitting there looking at it, that curbing is right there at the edge of the cobblestones. It comes right around tight.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm just, maintenance too, I mean,
I mean,
the car will hit the bollard or something, I don't know.
we can go from the square to a radius corner there.
The radius or just a little clipped corner, just they cut the
Bring it in.
corner back a foot.
Sure.
A foot make is a big, it's huge. It's a big
Oh, I know,
difference.
it's such a small space, but
I know, it's tiny, it's tiny.
you know, we're so used to dealing with small spaces
Yeah.
with that restaurant.
Yeah, we actually figured it out. It was 6 of these, 18 feet with 6 of these desks. And less than the width of this, so really small space.
Yeah, and it's less than 10 feet deep.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 14 feet.
So all the tables are gonna be 30 by 30?
Yep.
Okay.
So there's Councilor Murphy and Councilor Markovich, did you?
Does this need a license extension for
I
service?
already have that,
You got that for outside?
and it's conditional
I
on
don't
what goes
know.
on here.
I think the only reservation I have is that the public safety folks sign off and they don't have any, it doesn't create any access problems to them for behind those buildings, but otherwise I don't have any problem with it.
Councilor Mary Lombardi?
Yeah, people with disabilities.
Well, there are no steps, and there's a 4-foot egress here where you go into the,
Oh, okay.
Is that a 36-inch wide door in the back or 42?
I think it's 36.
Yeah,
Comes
that's
out the
not-
back?
Yeah, that's not handicapped.
Okay.
But is your front door handicapped or something?
Yeah, well, we've been approved by the, because we were grandfathered in, it's been there for so long.
I think the clerk has some update on the license side.
I just want to clarify that Mr. Maloney was approved on May 4th by the License Commission to go ahead with alteration of premise contingent upon approval by City Property
Yeah.
Committee. So I can't actually send it to ABCC in Boston for approval unless he's got city approval.
Okay.
Which is this right now?
Yeah. So one way to,
Want to try one vote?
well, yeah, I mean, this is a city property issue, the way I read it, and I think it's just one vote. So, but it is an area that you may want to think about looking at the procedures. That's why I put this on here, city property roles and issues too, because there is a procedure that was laid out a number of years ago, and I think we should just send it around and see if you all are comfortable with the city property,
Yeah.
procedure for use of city property, etc. Anyway, one way to do this would be to structure it that you approve the use of the property subject to review by fire department with bollards that are acceptable to central services and an agreement. You authorize me to sign an agreement subject to the approval of fire department for egress, city property, central services for bollards, and in a form acceptable to the city solicitor. That would be a way to do that. I think she is more comfortable with a license than a lease, and or an arrangement similar to what we have with DPW for the front sidewalk. So that's what we're trying to figure out. This is just a little different from the front sidewalk, so we just have to think about it a little bit differently. So if somebody wanted to move that, I think that
I
would
would
be...
like to make that motion to move it.
The one thing I might, only other thing I might add to it is the building department to make sure they don't
Okay,
have
and
any,
the building
that they don't have
Okay.
any issues. It's more their,
All right, so is that a second, and you're adding that
Yeah.
then as a friendly amendment?
Friendly
and
amendment.
Mary Ann is accepting it? Okay, I think that works. Is there any further discussion on this? We hope it works out.
Thank you very much.
You ready to
You're
vote?
welcome.
We'll give it a try.
Wait, let's have a vote first. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
And in the same vein, you have two more.
Excuse me, please. Mr. Maloney had asked me yesterday about a check, and apparently this form says he has to give a check for $110. And who would he make that to? I've never handled one of these.
City of Northampton.
Okay, I can give it to you right now.
Give it to that guy.
Okay, well, that transaction is transpiring. Ms. Wright, in her capacity as business manager of the school department, had brought forth two agreements to extend leases. These are actually no-cost leases to the clerk programs, is that right? So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wright, and I'm going to actually recuse myself from this discussion because the leases are to the people I will be working for in September. Even though there's no monetary benefit, I want to remove any appearance of conflict. So I'm going to turn chairing the meeting over to Councilor Narcoitz.
Ms. Wright, go ahead.
We brought to school committee last meeting 2 leases for a Head Start program, one at the high school and one at Ryan Road. And these were just renewals of leases that we had had actually, we had never had a lease at Ryan Road, but we had had a lease before at the high school. And it expired and we just kind of forgot about it. So we decided to bring forward 2 5-year leases, one for the high school, one for Ryan Road. And what this does is it gives the city 3 Head Start programs, because we now have the one at Vernon Street and we have the one at the high school. And Ryan Road was the most recent one that we added. And the reason we targeted Ryan Road for that program is because some of the population that we're trying to serve with the Head Start program lives in that area and transportation is an issue. So it's very advantageous for us to have the Ryan Road program as well.
You're talking about the transportation part of it. Where is the problem with transportation?
Well, some of the families that we want to get into the Head Start program. Yes. So this way they have the option of going to a program that's closer to home for them. So both programs are operating in our schools. They're both very successful. The high school program actually has high schoolers interning in that program. So what we're trying to do is trying to just catch up on the paperwork, which again, we never did a lease for Ryan Road, realized we should have done one. And we want to renew the lease at the high school. And 5-year leases is what, we had originally proposed 6 years, but Joe Cook pointed out that we can only do 5 years. So the school committee actually has to formally ask city council for approval for a 5-year lease.
Absolutely, there's no monetary value in this at all, there's nothing.
No, they each use one classroom in the building, and they do some of their own, minimal custodial, and our custodial staff would do, more major stuff, but they empty their trash and that kind of thing.
And how much are they leasing it for?
There's no, it's a public service, so
Okay.
there's no money exchanged for this lease. We feel that it's enough of a benefit to the school department, because we're trying to promote early childhood and really quality early childhood programs, so that's why there's, it's a benefit to us, it's a benefit to them. And it also, once the kids get into the Ryan Road school, they want to stay in Ryan Road. The high school program has that added benefit of high schoolers getting an internship ability. So we're asking city council to allow us to enter into a 5-year agreement.
So the program at the Ryan Road School is not going to cost the city any more money?
No. There's no,
Just
they don't use our, our school supplies, they're not connected in that way. They bring in their own supplies. The students do eat in our food service, or food service does provide meals, but they reimburse us for those under the same terms as free and reduced lunch. So, it provides a little extra income into the food service program too.
With Maggie Riddle, what was her feelings toward all that?
Oh,
She must have been
Margie.
very impressed.
Oh, yes. Oh, she, there was, when we asked if we could do a program there was no question. She was quite happy to have it, so. And we feel that the Ryan Road one, because of the location, is really key.
I'm very happy about it.
So then essentially, because it's a lease, the finance committee has to countersign what the school committee has already approved.
Right.
Comes to us. So then we need a motion to approve these 2 5-year leases at Ryan Road and Northampton High School. So,
I make a motion.
okay.
And this goes to council, because I'm assuming council has to.
It's actually
or
just
us?
finance.
Is it just us?
Just finance.
finance.
Just finance.
Just, again, it's like the property.
property.
Huh, what was that, Gene?
Wasn't a Jake break.
Oh. Okay, so there's been a motion made then for the finance committee to approve these 2 leases at Ryan Road and NHS for the Head Start program. Is there a second?
Yeah, I would have liked to have talked to Margie Riddle. You said you'd had talked to her?
No, I asked her what she felt about it.
Oh,
But I know Maggie Riddle, and I know how she is with our young children at that school, and I know she would never say no. I know her.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, I'll second it.
Okay.
And I don't, obviously we haven't seen the documents, but I'm assuming they're satisfactory, so.
I assume that they've been approved by the city solicitor and
Joe Cook
Joe
approved the
Cook, the
form,
procurement
and,
officer.
right, and they've been actually signed by school committee. We realized we had kind of jumped ahead, so.
Okay. So we still need to sign, you'll need to get our signatures on it as well, so, okay. So any other discussion about it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, and there's one abstention. I'll turn the imaginary gavel back over to you.
So now you have a couple ordinances. The first one is, these are the parking changes that have been proposed. So the first two are first one is moving the ticket cost from $10 to $15. Do you want to take them one at a time? Maybe that'd be easier. No?
Take them one at a time. I'd like to go over them.
One at a time. Okay, so the first one is moving the ticket from, and we're not going to vote tonight on these. These will be voted on in your finance committee next meeting. This is just your. So the first one is moving the fine from $10 to $15. Okay? And then the second one is increasing some of the costs at some of the various meters. Okay? So moving from 50 cents an hour on Main Street to 75 cents an hour on both the 1 and 2 hour meters, and then going from, in the 10-hour meters, depending on where they are, either going from 15 cents to 25 cents or 25 cents to 50 cents. Okay?
And these numbers are, you're projecting revenues in your fiscal year 12
So
budget.
I'm projecting in two different places. So the fines, remember the fines come directly to the general fund. So we closed a $300 and something, $332 or no, $350,000 gap on the general fund side with these fine increases. Okay, now fines as a percentage of the budget and actual dollars have been going down, which means that we're not ticketing as many people, and people are obeying the law, and that's okay. We're going up. So we think that'll bring in about $350,000, and we put that into the message. Into the budget. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have any input from local business or?
I spoke to the chamber, and I talked to Danny Kuzo representing the bid. His board has been notified, and the reaction was, I wouldn't say it was positive, but it certainly wasn't negative either. It was, we understand why you're doing it. The last time we raised the fine, I think, Counselor, you and I are the only ones that were on the council. It was in 97, 98 or 99.
When we raised it.
Right. Mary Ford was the mayor, John Musante was the finance director. Yeah. So we haven't raised this in 12 years. And these parking rates were modified, I think, in 2003. I will say that I was in Springfield the other day, and I parked somewhere, and I was really worried about getting a ticket. And their tickets are $25. So we're still, and the only people that pay for the ticket are people who break the law, or break the rule.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then that's the second one was the fees, and so the parking fines go into the general fund, and the fees go into the parking meter reserve fund, and part of that. We haven't raised these in quite a few years, and we also haven't really added very many parking spaces, so that amount of revenue in that is relatively static. But at the same time, we've been adding things to that fund, including police officers, and I raised the amount that we contributed to the DPW, et cetera. So we need a little growth in that fund to cover some of the things that we're paying for out there.
I remember when this went up from 25 cents to 50 cents, I was working across the street, and then I would watch the store clerks feed meters all day long. I was working in front of the First Church. It was the bookstore. And so I spoke in favor of going from 25 to 50 cents. And but I also know in this economy, I know a guy that went up $2 on his haircuts. And he lost quite a few patrons that now go different places in the city.
Fair point.
So I get nervous, just, you think it's only 25 cents.
I think one of the things I would say about it is, I think what we try to do, these are the premium spots mostly, these Main Street ones are the premium spots. And part of what you're trying to do with parking rates is you're trying to price them effectively so that there's turnover, so people aren't feeding meter all day. And so part of what we've done is we've made the garage much more affordable, so the first hour's free, and you know, the rates are much cheaper. We've made all the other side lots to try to encourage people to park there, to go for the cheaper rates, and that leaves Main Street open for more turnover, you know. So, you know, I think, you know, parking is a commodity. It's a expensive commodity. You know, that's expensive real estate. And, you know, if you're a private business that has to buy parking or provide parking, there's a premium. So I think we have to, if we want to keep it accessible and open, one of the ways you do it is by setting fees. And I again, you know, I see people come from out of town and look at our fees and go, wow, that's incredible. You know, go to Fenway and park there to go see a game. You know, stuff like that. So.
$43 for 3 hours.
Exactly, yeah.
I still, you know, I still think about, I know it's a convenience store. You pay more money for stuff in a convenience store because it's convenient.
One of the things we tried to do for convenience sake, though, was to add those 15 minutes free spaces so that people who live in town and just want to run in and get their coffee or pick up their dry cleaning or get their bagel on their way to work, they can do that. And part of the reason I think our revenue is down a little bit, that's one of the reasons we're not ticketing people. We're doing a quick run in. It was not the only reason, but that's one of them. So I agree with you that it's a delicate balance on these, but I do think your observation of the people who work in the stores coming out and feeding the meters is as relevant today as it was 12 or 13 years ago. And that we really would love it if Main Street employees would actually park in the back lots and keep those lots for people who are trying to do business. Yeah, Councilor Marion LaBarge,
And I agree with you, Mayor, because we've heard that for how many years about employees parking in the garage and leaving the spaces out in Main Street for people who come to shop. I don't have a problem with raising the fee right now because it's been at least 12 or 13 years since we've not raised it. So everything is a risk that you do, no matter if you go for haircuts or wherever it is. Everything's a risk, and it's your choice of where you want to park, where you want to get your haircut. So
yeah, I do think we've raised the parking meters cost since. So I would say we have raised that
in 2000.
In 3 or 4, I can't remember what it was. But it's much more recent than the ticket.
Yeah. It was 04 or 05. But you know, I just looked over in Amherst, that 25 cents gave you 38 minutes. And that's right in front of Judy's.
But don't forget that, you know, I think their market is different than ours. Every market is different. So they've struggled with the long-term lot issue. They don't have as many long-term lots as we do. So
Yeah, I did.
Councilor Murphy, did you? Okay.
So these will just come to our next council finance committee meeting.
Right. There's not a vote.
Yeah, I know that.
So the next two. I'm sorry. Next one. Adjust the ticket prices then. So we had a class of fines that were $15 fines, but we're moving the parking to $10, right, from 10 to 15. So this moves the class that were 15 up to 25. And these are for parking. These are for tickets, not for fees. I was just going to look it up. These are the things like parking in prohibited zones and those kinds of things. These are the ones that are more egregious than just overtime parking.
What about people parking in handicap?
Handicap stays the same. We're not making a change on that. This is just that group of tickets that's not the high handicap behind, but it's not the $10 just overtime parking. This is the prohibited zones, blocking the crosswalk, I think, is in this group. There's a whole set of them, okay? So this just adjusts them because the other ones are.
Yeah, it's any person who parks on a sidewalk, crosswalk, within 10 feet of a hydrant, within an intersection, prohibited zones, tow-away zones, fire lane, bike lane. So it's not like you're too long in a meter, it's you're parking someplace you're just not supposed to park. So
Would that include bus stops?
Let's see.
A separate law passed.
Yeah,
bus stops.
that's
Massachusetts access to bus.
And we adopted that higher, we adopted
We did,
that
didn't we?
higher
Yeah, I
level
think
when it
that's
came
right.
out.
Just recently, okay.
Yeah, that's a separate Group D fine, and that's a $100 fine, separated out as bus stop. Yeah, so that was, it says that's prescribed by Mass General Law. And that's the same as handicap. So now handicap and bus stop are the same.
And these will just come before the council.
Right, we're not voting on them tonight. So those are the set that have to do with parking. We haven't,
Excuse me. They were referred, all of these, so don't they have to also go to ordinance before they come to council?
Yeah, they were referred to ordinance committee too, so they'll have to come at a meeting after ordinance is recommended then.
Right.
Don't they have to go to Eagle too, right? Or have they
no.
done that? No, one of them does, I think,
That's the next one.
or maybe not.
It's the next
Number
set.
6 days.
We have always done the votes for those kinds of things at the finance committee at the meeting, so ordinance should take its position at the finance committee.
So, yeah.
So you don't need a vote in this committee? Because
When's
you
your
referred
ordinance
them
committee
here.
meeting?
It's June 13th. I mean, we typically wait, but I think for a finance committee issue, we'll be fine not waiting. It's not really required. I mean, ordinance usually waits till everybody else, but finance usually votes on it the same night that it takes place on the first reading. So.
We can also
Yeah.
vote, I just think we've typically saved these
Yeah,
more
no, I get that.
more substantial votes for
Yeah.
the on-air night, and we could do it at the next meeting, on air, and you would still have it.
And then it just would, we
Right.
would vote on it, and then
Right.
we would take it up on the 13th, and then it wouldn't come back till July to the full council.
Unless you want to take 2 readings. So that's the other option. I'll tell you that we haven't budgeted that second set of ticket recommendations because we didn't know what was going to happen with that, the ones going from 15 to 25. So I don't have a cost estimate on that.
But we could take it to ordinance and then do 2 readings
You
at the
could.
second council meeting and get it in place for fiscal year.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
It's up to
be
you.
nice to have it in place for the new fiscal year, so it's consistent, it doesn't change.
Yeah. We'll take it up at the finance committee meeting of what's the first
June
one?
2nd.
June 2nd, and take a vote. It will still go to ordinance on the 13th.
And actually, and then the 17th, it can be voted on.
Then it'll come back on the 17th, and you can decide whether or not you want to take 1 or 2 votes on the 17th.
Well, the other thing is, don't we have 15 days into the fiscal year to make adjustments
June
like this?
16th.
This is just an
The
ordinance, it
previous
doesn't
year.
matter. It's adjustments on the,
But I mean, in terms of FY '12 budget.
yeah, this won't affect, if you want to do a revenue adjustment, that can be done as late as November when you set the tax rate.
Okay.
And I would suggest not doing that because
No.
our parking ticket receipts have been all over the map. I think you just leave it alone and see what happens for a year.
What I'm just saying is there a reason this has to be in place by
No.
July 1st? Okay.
Just be nice if it was the same for the whole fiscal year.
It does give you 1 full year of comparison, but it's not necessary.
Okay, so we have not budgeted this $25 fine yet.
Yeah, but I don't
We
think
don't have
it's,
a projection on
I
it.
don't think it's a substantial amount.
But the other 2 we have budgeted.
We have not budgeted the meter increases because that's gonna flow to the fund balance in parking, which we needed to do.
Yeah.
And then but the ticket revenue has been budgeted.
Okay.
We're in balance for next year on parking. And we have enough money but we are reducing the amount of reserves there, which we need for going into the following year, okay? Okay, the next item is, and this again is paired, and this is upon the recommendation of the Energy and Sustainability Commission, myself, Councilors Narkowitz and Pam Schwartz. Actually, there's only one, right? This is the PACE ordinance.
And I'm just going to ask a point of order on this because one of the reasons why we scheduled a public hearing
Right.
in the committee process was we wanted there to be a public hearing so that councilors could have the public hearing, get all the input, and then go back to their committees and vote on it. So, I mean, we can talk about it today if we want, but we're going to do a public hearing.
Right,
on
and there
June
won't be a
7th.
vote. There won't be a vote
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, so on June 7th, there'll be a full, the commission's putting together a full presentation and all that stuff. And then we'll hear public input. So we're not going to vote on it.
No. This is just to give you a heads up on it, okay? So what this does, it's interesting because Dave Corbett's been coming to meetings and saying, why don't you take CPA money and lend it to homeowners and collect it back through their taxes so they can make energy improvements? We're not allowed to do that with CPA money. But this actually allows you to do that. So It's a very interesting thing. It's called a PACE ordinance, and it allows for, it's an energy revolving loan fund where the city borrows the money, loans it to the homeowner, and the homeowner pays it back through a betterment on their taxes. Now, we're not talking about doing homeowners right now because it's caught up in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, whether or not you can do homeowners. We are setting this up though, eventually first being able to do commercial properties and then eventually being able to do homeowners.
But it's commercial, but also multifamily.
And multifamilies, thanks for that, right.
Yeah, so
multifamilies too.
there's a bill in Congress right now to try to fix this one problem with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac stuff, because they basically said they don't want to give first position to somebody, to one of these funds on a single-family home mortgage, like a typical betterment. So there's a little bit of a dispute about it. So there's a bill right now to try to fix that.
Well, that's interesting, because it's a betterment, essentially it's a tax, and taxes are currently in first position anyway, so it's not a big stretch.
For us, but it is for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But they don't want to give it up.
Well, but they did already.
Well,
they always take second seat to taxes, so.
They're saying this isn't really a tax.
That's not their position, or that's, at least they've got rulings saying that that's what the fight is about. So that's what they're trying to resolve. So a number of these programs are sort of in waiting mode before they can resolve that.
So the city will borrow this money.
So what happens is we borrow, let's go through, first of all, what this does is it leverages a bunch of the other utility company programs. So let's say, Gene, you have a commercial building that you want to improve energy-wise. You meet with the energy companies and they say, well, you can get this loan and you can get this and you can get that. But you want to do some things that don't have a 7-year payback, which is typically what a bank is going to lend you or the utility companies are going to give you. You want to do, let's say you want to do windows, which don't have a 7-year payback, right? This allows you to do a 15-year payback on the windows, for instance. We loan you the money, not for free, obviously. We're paying interest, you're paying interest. In fact, you pay a little bit more interest than us to pay for servicing the loan, right? And then you pay it back on your tax bill. It comes in as a betterment and you pay it back. Just like, remember when Marion Street did the sewer expansion because their septics were failing?
Yep.
They paid that back on their tax bills as a betterment.
That was in Title V, we did that Title V.
And before that, we had that Title V program.
Right.
So this is an expansion of the way you can do a betterment. Now, anybody in the city, for instance, if you have a neighborhood that wants sidewalks, today they could petition for sidewalks. We could build them for them, and they could pay it back as a betterment if the city said we can't do it right now. That's an example of that. This would allow it to be done for energy, and what it does is it reduces the energy costs to our businesses and then I hope our residents, which puts more money in the pocket. You know?
It's like mini ESCO.
It's like a mini ESCO. It's just like what the city did. Wendy's property is a good example. That kind of condo association, that might work if they don't have Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or Freddie, whatever it is, Freddie Mae or Fannie Mac.
Will we have somebody doing credit checks to?
Well, first off, with commercial, and this is part of what the presentation I think will go into, but if it's a commercial property, and if they're already going through the utility companies, they're going to have to be bankable to make this happen. So we may use their own bank we have to work out those.
The utility company bank.
Right. No, and some of their own money is going to be on the line here too. So let's say they want to take advantage of the 7-year free, the interest-free loans that are being run through the banks, plus they want to do something on top of that. But if you do a 7-year loan, let's say the payback isn't for 15 years, you get a better cash flow if you do it over 15 years, so you might want to do it over 15 years. So yes, there would be somebody who is vetting this. We have to figure out exactly where that sits.
I think that's going to all be part of the presentation,
right,
about developing all the rules and protocols and for making this happen.
It allows like a business person though to do what we did with the city buildings. Basically, that's what it allows them to do. Package the energy grants, the energy incentives, plus some financing and pay it back with their savings.
And the interest rates are lower?
Probably a little bit lower, but we would probably tack on something if we have to have some servicing of that loan. We're going to want to help to pay for that.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be,
That would be my question, why would we get into this if I don't want it to cost us anything?
I don't want it to cost us anything either. But the only people that really can run these are cities. So if we want to have it available to us, it has to be, cities and towns, it has to be run by us. So there's a couple in New York State that have been extremely successful. California and Colorado have had some really good success. Then Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae put a halt to the whole residential side. So, sounds like a heart monitor in the hospital, you know.
Viral one.
It's going with the paddles.
Did you want
I think one of your
CPR?
leads fell off. So, you know, so, but now people are looking on the commercial side and saying, well, these can be on the commercial side.
And the multifamily.
And the multifamily side. Well, I'm thinking commercial.
Yeah, but I want to stress that that's one of the areas we were looking at. We've done all these surveys on the Energy and Sustainability Commission of looking at energy use and who are big users of electricity and what are some of our less energy efficient properties, and they tend to be some of the multifamily homes. There are a lot of single family homes too, but
When you say multifamily
Four or
and
more.
commercial is 4 or more?
4 or more, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Are you getting any feedback from people with multi-families about this? I mean, you must have been talking.
We met with a couple of the property managers who were very interested in it. Partly because part of the theory here would be that there'd be somebody to help coordinate between the utility companies and the city's financing and everything together. And it's very difficult to figure out exactly how to use that utility financing. So
Who's going to do the work?
we're still working on that, identifying a vendor. We have to identify a vendor.
Well, I mean, who's going to do the work in the city? Who's going to track
This would be, it ultimately ends up in the treasurer's office and the collector's office, and we've had a couple meetings with the affected staff, and they are comfortable with it. I would say it's a little bit of a stretch in terms of learning about it, but we wouldn't, let me be clear that, let's say you had a property owner come in and say, I want to do this project. We wouldn't just go one property owner at a time and go out and do a borrow. We would have to bundle them just like we bundle city borrow.
Yes.
Right? It wouldn't be one at a time. So maybe there'd be 6 months where you're gathering up projects, and then you go out to borrow, and then you fund those projects. So we're still working on that.
And it'd probably go before some type of committee that would look at it.
I don't know if it would go through a committee or some sort of loan officer type person.
Or a group, just a group, some type of group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that some of the way the ordinance is written, a lot of the protocols and procedures would be reviewed by the Energy and Sustainability Commission, who would be the oversight monitoring of it. And Chris Mason, the energy officer, whoever the energy would also be involved as well. But the other thing to keep in mind is that through all of that, there's still a council oversight, because ultimately we have to vote on the lending authorization. So we still have ultimate veto power, 2/3 majority required in order to actually vote on the bond, the Pace Energy bond.
And is there any appetite for the banks subordinating to this, or just curious? Do you know?
Our first mortgage is probably not. They're like Freddie Mac, they don't want to.
On the residential side, no, but on the commercial side, I think, you know, if you can show them that the numbers work and you're able to pay it back, I don't see it as a big issue.
And I think the other thing we talked about is that in many cases, you'll have businesses that already have a line of credit with a, they'll probably be getting the financing from the same bank that already holds their mortgage. You know, somebody's working with foreign savings bank, they might come in to do this through that same bank. So that, it may be a moot point if it's the same bank holding.
I'm trying to figure out how it would work out in the city.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think the way I'm seeing it anyway, is there's kind of a front door. That could be an outside vendor, or it could be an employee of ours. We have to figure that out. My preference probably would be for an outside vendor who acts almost as a case manager for you as a business person. You come in, you say, here's what I want, here's what I need, what I want for my building. That person looks at all the available products, from what the gas company has, or the electric company has, looks at all of that, and then says, here's what you're eligible for under the rebate and the energy programs from the utilities. Here's a range of projects that would help you, and here's the savings that you would realize, really similar to what we went through with the ESCO program. And here's some different ways to finance it. Now, if you want to do the 0% 7-year with the energy companies, you could do that. But you have X amount more that could be done, that would be this much more savings. You could do some of that through the ESCO project that the PACE program that the city has. That would be packaged together then, signed off on by whoever that case manager is, then approved by the city as a part of its overall bundle. Then we go to law. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we don't have to send this up to, like, every time we do something to the Inspector General's office to see
No.
that we're following the 30B
No, because
bidding laws.
because the state approved the Chapter 44, Section 53E and 3/4, to create the Energy Revolving Fund, that talks about what you're allowed to do there, and this is an allowable use under 53E and 3/4.
Okay.
Okay? So, and that's enabling legislation to allow us to do it.
I think there's 24 states that have now quickly adopted these programs, so it's definitely, and the other piece of it is that we now have a lot, you've probably seen it, we now have a lot of these home energy companies that have grown up. So there's like a real sort of pent-up demand for a lot of this sort of energy retrofitting and insulation, and a lot of these people that come in and do blower door tests, and so it's also viewed as a sort of stimulating that part of the economy.
Okay, so this will be, it'll be an assessment, it'll go on the tax bill, will it go on as a separate bill or
No.
the same bill?
No, it's on as a betterment and it goes right on the same
Right,
thing.
in the same bill, okay.
And,
No extra mailing?
no, we
Okay.
talked to Alyssa about this, and I think, the tax collector, Alyssa Lamford, who has been clear that it can be added on. She's actually looked at the bill to see exactly how to do that. It can be added on to the bill. We have other betterments on the bill now, I think.
The bid.
The bid wasn't on the bill, we're adding on to the bill, we're doing it a little differently, we're moving to add that to the bill, but we had the Laurel Lane betterment that was on the bill. So we've had betterments over the years that have been on the bill. This is not unusual to have on. It might be unusual for Northampton because we haven't done a lot of betterments, but it's not unusual to have a betterment on a tax bill. Unicet, who does our software, has done betterments in other places. It's not unusual.
Now, are we it's perfect timing, the last payment has just been made on our Title V's.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Just recently.
Yeah, I think that's right. That was a long stand, that was I forget when that started, when they changed the law, which was in the 90s.
Yeah, it was a 15-year.
Yeah, that seems right.
15-year paper. Right.
Something like 96 maybe.
I'm ready to, think of some more questions.
I think the public hearing will be great, because I know they're really trying.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear somebody's presentation. So.
But this was sort of a heads up, this is coming, if you have questions about it. The other person who's David's obviously very knowledgeable about it. Chris Mason is very knowledgeable about it, so there are people that you can talk to about it, okay? But the fundamentals are, we're allowed to set up a revolving fund. We're allowed to set up these loans. We can collect it back through a betterment, as long as it's being used for energy efficiency.
And it stays with the property.
That's
the other piece of it, is that, it's not like people are gonna, it stays with the property.
They don't have a 30-day opt-out after they sell the property.
But also, let's say you have a property, and you decide you want to do windows, and you know it's a 15-year payback, and you do this, okay? And then 6 years in, you decide, I'm selling that property and I'm moving to Florida. The betterment continues. You're
Sure.
selling it with the betterment.
Oh, yeah.
So unlike a bank loan where you have to pay off the loan at the end, you don't have to pay this off.
The person buying it.
It continues the betterment for the period of time that the betterment is there.
Yeah, I'm all for the energy company and all that.
That's what this does.
I just be very careful that it doesn't cost us a penny.
I think we're trying to craft it in such a way that it shouldn't cost the city any money, and it may, if we set it up right, I think it's going to be a benefit both to, I think it's going to be a benefit to the community the same way the ESCO is a benefit to the city.
I think it's sort of the next phase of that. We've been trying to do energy conservation within the city, and now this is a way to bring it out to the private sector. Try to
I remember us talking about this, 4 or 5 years ago, and the mechanism hadn't been set up yet.
Exactly.
Now it's finally
So
caught
now
up.
this is actually.
And, I hope Mr. Corbett hears about it and comes to that hearing, because he has been saying, isn't there a way for you to help people with their homes? And I'm hoping that the Congress passes that law that allows us to move this into the residential sector, because that would be great. A lot of people are in old homes that need a lot of work, and this would be a way for them to do that.
And I think it would be great too about this hearing, I think it would be very educational.
Do you have any idea what this rate will be? I mean, I think I have one loan is 3.5% or something, home improvement, you know. I mean, they're cheap right now, so I'm just curious.
You know what, it may be that somebody looks at the bank financing and says, well, I'm better off with bank financing. The only thing is it's tough to get 15 years on bank financing at a very low rate.
Yeah.
We can give you a little bit better rate on the longer term. So that'll be the decision that the person will have to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just get nervous about the city being everybody's bank.
Well, I don't want us to be everybody's bank either, but I think there's a place for us to carefully work under existing state law to help people reduce their energy impact. And because any of the money they're not spending on oil or anything else that's going somewhere else, they can reinvest in our local community. Right? If your electric bill is less, or you switch from oil to gas and save some money, the money stays here. And if that means that it stays for jobs with people who are energy work in the energy conservation area and they're reinvesting in that, and then they have the money that they save, I think that's a good thing. That's the place I think the city has a little bit of a role.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next is an FY11 budget. I had asked Mr. Latender to be here tonight to talk about overtime, but he unfortunately had a family issue with his daughter who is leaving town today, so I'm going to give you the update. We've talked about that on the budget hearing, and I've done a fair amount of follow-up on that. So the dilemma is there's two parts. There's more than one part to the dilemma. I went through one of them the other night, which is the cards getting stuck in the ticket in the arm, and that's when he gets the calls from dispatch. There's some of them. There's not a huge number, but remember, every time the person shows up, it's 3 hours. Okay. The other dilemma is the cards that come, when you come in, you get a card out of the gate. When you leave, you put the card into the gate. When the cards have to move from the in-gate, from the out-gate back over to the in-gate at some point, right? Because that runs out. So the same person comes in on Saturday and Sunday to switch the cards. And every time that person shows up, because of the union contract, it's 3 hours. Okay. In addition, there are a couple evenings during the week that we don't have evening coverage that sometimes that person also has to show up. So we're doing a couple things to solve these problems, okay? The third issue, sorry, there was one more. The third issue is that sometimes there's a problem with one of the pay stations. That's not an emergency because there are pay stations on the other floors, but if the person's there, if the person comes in anyway to do the cards, they will check the pay stations. If they're called back within the same evening, I've gone through 2 months worth of overtime reports. They have not been charging for overtime for the second call. But in order to reduce this overtime, and you put your nail, hit the nail on the head. It's something that I have been working with him on, and we had already made an agreement to order double the cards that we have, because if we have twice as many cards, you don't have to move them back and forth quite as often, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing we're doing. We think that'll help. We shouldn't have to have somebody come in just to switch the cards. The second thing we're doing is that we have a 3:30 to 11:30 person on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 5 days. We're moving that person from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're working with that person now and hopefully moving them to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So none of those weekend nights, including Sunday, will be uncovered. The only 2 days that will not have coverage in the evening are Tuesday and Wednesday. They don't tend to be high usage days at the garage, and they will, the last act in the afternoon every day now will be to replenish the cards and to check the machines. And we're going to see what effect that has. I think those 2 changes are going to make a big difference.
So,
Okay?
Mayor, you're saying Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
And Monday.
Because we were seeing overtime on Monday nights because the cards needed to be switched. And there wasn't a Monday night person. So now we'll have a Monday night person.
And who was doing that?
Somebody was coming back in to do it.
Who was it?
I'm not gonna go into personal names. We have a person in the garage who was doing who takes care of that machine, who was coming in to do the card switching, and is called by dispatch. So it's one person who works in that office, okay? We're gonna move that responsibility to the person who's gonna be there at night. Okay? From 3:30 to 11:30.
And change them at the end of the normal workday. Change
So the person who comes in
Empty
the
the
morning
cash
is going
machine.
to empty the cash machines and make sure the machines are ready for night every day, which they do as a practice, but I've asked it to be instituted as a policy. Okay, they were doing it, but I want it to be now. That's the policy. That's how it's run every day. What I'd like to do, if you're comfortable with this, is we're going to make these changes, and I'd like to actually come back to you by the end of the summer and say, here's where we are on the overtime. I think these two changes are going to make a big difference.
I mean, it's fine, I actually went back on the overtime back to 2004. And I went back with records back a couple of years. And for one employee, from January of 2010 until April of this year, 2011, there's 783 hours of overtime. And in pay periods, some are 36 hours, some are 60 hours, 30 hours, 39 hours, one is 96 hours. So
that one person also
Yep.
has some plowing responsibility. Has had some plowing responsibility. I don't know about this.
No, it's a clerical position.
Yeah, but she has
I
driven.
know there's some winter, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But even if I gave that one particular clerical person all of the calls after working hours,
Mhm.
it still only came up to 168
We-
hours
we had-
versus 783 hours.
We hadn't filled, because if you only take the dispatch calls, you're right. You're only taking the dispatch calls, right?
Dispatch calls, yep.
Right. What I said was there are also additional times that person is coming in regularly on Saturday and Sunday and Monday nights because of the card issue which we're trying to solve. That's where the additional hours are coming from, plus some plowing hours. I agree with you, it's too much. Did I let this one maybe get away? Maybe I did. But we're working on it now, and I think we're going to bring the number down. I'm happy to report back to you where the number is. The other thing is that 3 to 11 person or 3:30 to 11:30 position, that was vacant for a while. We didn't have that person there.
So, are there cards that are submitted for
No,
overtime?
No, there's a time sheet. And the manager has to approve it. And the manager understands that what I want, and the manager understands what I want to have happen, and that's what's going to happen.
Okay, and who keeps it, who has all these timesheets? Are they public record or are they not?
No, they're not. I don't believe they're public. I mean, it's really, I have to be clear, it's my job to discipline people if they're not behaving properly. If I believe there's anything that's untoward, I will follow up on it. I'm working with the manager right now to contain it. I don't believe that it's counselor's job to delve into individuals' timesheets. You brought an area of concern to me, and I'm taking it on, counselor. But it's my job to discipline. I'm not the appointing authority. I'm the one that needs to deal with it.
Okay.
Okay? And I'm happy, again, I'm happy to sit down with you if you have particulars that you want to look at, but I'm not comfortable doing it in a public meeting about a particular company.
Okay.
This person is represented by a union. Both the manager is represented by a union and the employee is. So they have some rights here. And so
I don't think we can do that.
I would prefer, I would like, you have brought a policy to me, which is the use of overtime. And I say to you, I accept the challenge, and I will report back to you at the end of August, beginning of September, and we'll look at where the numbers are.
Okay.
Okay?
And I had some other question too to ask him, but I'll have to do it at a different
Is
day.
this-
But he also said that we lost $30,000 worth of revenue. I wish he was here.
Well, I can't.
Yeah, okay, but he's.
But hey, everybody has family.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
We had 350 parking spaces that were unavailable this year.
At various points.
At
Not
various points.
all at the same time.
Yeah.
No, at various points.
And that is an area, there's 220 parking spaces in the Hampton, from the little mall over here. 221 spaces, and there's 81 spaces out behind Hampton Avenue. So there's 320 spaces, whatever, or 300 spaces. It just seems that 350 spaces.
He never claimed, the claim is not that they were empty for the whole, they were not available all winter. The concern was that at various points during the course of the winter, we were down 350 spaces, not at all at the same time, but at different points during the winter. So, and I'm going to say this, and I know Councilor Marion LaBarge has no problem doing this. If you have questions about his numbers on that question, you should pick up the phone and talk to him about that.
I will.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. So FY11, I think we have another update on FY11 as well.
Right. I've been working with the auditor to look at the accounts that we think might be going into a deficit, and kind of got it in three different groups. There's some accounts that have some very small deficits, and for instance, MIS, dispatch, the building inspector, the treasurer, but it's either in their OM or their PS, and they're going to take from the other one. So they're going to balance within their budget. So for instance, MIS looks like they're about 1,000 over in their OM, but they have 1,000 in their PS. So those are small transfers that we'll be writing up for you. We have some slightly larger ones. We're looking at the legal account that may need an additional 10 to 12,000. We've identified where we'll take that. We have some extra personnel money in the mayor's office because of Chris's retirement, and in HR because they have a position that they haven't filled this year. So we'll be taking those. And then another slightly larger one, the unemployment account. I looked back, historically the city has always transferred money into unemployment because it's historically underfunded. Looking like we have a $65,000 deficit in there, and what we'll recommend is we've gotten some $64,000 reimbursement from the early retiree reinsurance program, and that's about $64,000. So those two, that will ask you to transfer that money into health insurance, and then we'll transfer the surplus out of health insurance into the unemployment account.
So the early retirement is $64,000 additional extra.
Yes.
We're getting that because we insure our early retirement. We allow them access to our health insurance.
Right.
So we have to put that money back into health insurance to reimburse us.
Okay.
That leaves us a fund balance in health insurance. We're taking some of that fund balance in health insurance out to pay for some other bills.
And legal accounts, which accounts? Do you have any idea? And what's it in?
It's one account.
It's just one account. It's city council.
Okay. And it's just for a whole
It's
menagerie.
It's, I can tell you what it's for. It's basically for collective bargaining because we're in collective bargaining now. And we have a couple of unfair labor practices coming out of the fire department. And I'll update you further at the main meeting about that.
Okay.
And then the largest deficit that we're looking at, the snow and ice account, all of the bills are in, and we're looking at a deficit of about $475,000. That would mean that we have spent, our total for the year is $801,000 in the snow and ice. So I know this probably isn't a surprise. Everybody knew that this was going to be a really bad number. So I'm working with the auditor to figure out not only where there were deficits in some accounts, but where we have some surpluses. So I'll be bringing you transfers at all of the next meetings. The next city council meeting, I would like to do a first and second reading just so that we can get those transfers right into Munis so that we can then continue to look at accounts. Because we have a very short window to try and balance everything at the first meeting in July. And since I'm trying to balance the school side and the city side, I'd like to try and get them done as quickly ahead of time as possible this year.
So you are asking, once this comes to city council, that you want a second reading?
A first and second on this first group that I'm going to bring you.
Now, the $801,000 in snow and ice, does that also include the $260,000 for removing the snow from the roofs?
We already did that transfer.
Okay, so it does. So
We
So
paid
it's
for
over
that.
$1 million.
We paid for that out of the central services O&M budget,
I think we
Right.
transferred money into O&M.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that the 801,000 did not include that.
No, we were hoping, they had about $335,000 maybe voted for snow.
You voted in February out of free cash,
Right.
for
Right.
money for the roofs.
And so we were, our initial number that we had before Mr. Pyle left was another, we were hoping to not have to do any more than about $230,000 or $240,000. But as they've been finishing and tallying up, this was a brutal winter where we need to pay for it. So we're scraping all the accounts to find where we can find the money.
And roof repair.
We're,
I'm just asking, I mean,
oh no, I'm not criticizing at all, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that as a criticism. I'm pointing out the sheet because everything that we transferred into central services is also available for any roof repairs they had. But my memory of what Mr. Pomerantz said was that the contractors were responsible for the roof repairs if there was any damage that they did as a part of the show. And if there's any other roof repairs, he has enough in his OM to take care of. Okay?
All right, so since you want these to be voted on 2 readings, have you talked with like all the department heads into regards to,
Repeatedly.
okay,
Yes.
where they should not be spending?
Yes, I sent an email to them all to defer any non-essential spending till we get this sorted out, so. Plus, we want as much to roll into free cash for next year, because we will be using almost every dollar in our current free cash to balance this budget.
Because I think if they weren't told that,
No, we told them.
I sent them that last week after I did a first cut of these, so.
They're very careful anyway. I will say, they don't go on spending sprees at the end of the year.
no, but we at least had to tell them.
Well,
Some of them said I already knew that, so. The one surprising thing is that I did talk to Mr. Connor today. He's gonna have a little bit left in his vets benefits for the first time ever that he hasn't balanced out to the penny.
yes.
Which is, so we may have figured out where the max is. Okay,
Let's hope.
so, let's hope, right. So he'll be returning some of that back, either in the form of a transfer or as a free cash, return free cash, okay? So that's FY11. So you're gonna see the big ones are unemployment, legal, snow and ice.
And then
The others are
very
relatively small, okay? And many of them are within the departments. They're just moving money back between the PS and OM. Okay. And what else do we have for FY11?
That's it.
That's it for FY11?
Yeah.
Okay. So FY12. You have the budget. The only thing that I want to report that's changed is I've been trying to track down how much money has been in handicap parking tickets. It's been my week for parking. So it looks like since the beginning of the fiscal year, we've collected $1,200 in handicap parking, all handicap parking fines, plus $50 in late fees for those fines. Okay? So what I'm going to suggest that you do, because it's difficult to amend the budget at this point up, you can't amend it up, right? You can only cut it, is that we're trying to sort out, and I guess I didn't realize this, and I apologize. We're trying to sort out exactly what kind of account we should put it in, and that we will populate it at the time that you set the tax rate. We'll put that money in and you'll set up that account, okay? Now, that means that won't be till November, but from July to November, I would authorize Patty to spend money if the Committee on Disabilities needs to, out of her budget, and then we would replenish it. Okay?
Okay, now you're talking about this $1,200,
About
correct?
$400.
1,200 you said?
1,200, sorry.
Right. I thought we had $4,000,
Nobody has been able to track down where that number came
because
from.
even Patty was told that.
I don't know where she got the number, because I asked Alyssa to go into the handheld, where we record every single one of them, and look and find out exactly how many have been paid. And she gave me the ticket number, the plate number, and everything, and I have it, and it's only $1,200. So I don't know where that $4,000 number came from, but I trust Alyssa's number.
I think they were talking about maybe there were 40 tickets written. Some get appealed, some don't.
Maybe. But that may be true.
Because I actually got that number from the parking clerk. $4,000. That's
Well,
where I got the number. That's where the number came from. I
The
got
the number out of their software is that, because we can't count ones that are written, we can only count ones that are collected. We can't count ones that are written, they are not coming in as a revenue to the city. If they've been appealed, we don't get the revenue.
I mean, I'm only guessing that's for the $4,000.
Because Patty got the same, somebody told her about it.
The number is $1,200.
Okay.
That's the number today. So,
So when will that money be?
so what I'm suggesting is that you remember in November, you always set the tax rate and then we adjust some of the revenues and expenses as we need to, because some numbers that may have changed. So what I'm suggesting is that Susan come in at that time with the acting mayor and present you that that line item funded to the tune of whatever we end up with at the end of this year. Okay?
Added on to the 1,200.
Right. So if we get to July 1st and there's another $400, we put it in. If there's another $800, we put it in. Okay? Does that make sense? And then the other piece of that is, if there's some spending that needs to happen up to that date that the Committee on Disabilities feels that they need to spend, that Patty be authorized to spend it out of her O&M and be reimbursed through a transfer later in the year. Okay?
And going forward,
Right.
we'll put in place a mechanism so that this will automatically populate a fund that'll be reserved for the Committee on
Right, but
Disabilities.
it would always have to come to city council for approval of that.
True. Joyce Karpinski and Susan Wright are looking at what are some different ways to do it. They may prefer a revolving fund, and that's what they're looking at. I think Mr. Pyle preferred not a revolving fund, and there never was a meeting of the minds on this, and that's why we're here today with this problem. So we're trying to figure out a way to settle it. I'm kind of inclined now to say that a revolving fund is probably the easiest way to do it.
I would
Just
agree.
go right
Yeah.
ahead.
Because then it's self-contained, it's money in, money
Yeah,
out, you
absolutely.
can see
Yeah.
exactly where it's going.
And Patty would be the only one that would take out.
Patty would have to be authorized to take it out by the committee. Okay?
It would not have to go through city council, then it would be money out.
No, it would have to be authorized by city council as part of the budget, and in this case, you would create it mid-year. You have to create a revolving fund, and you have to put a maximum amount on how much it can be in a revolving fund. So this one, you might say, the maximum is $6,000, and, and Patty is the custodian of the fund, or whoever's gonna be the custodian of the fund, okay?
And never spend more than what is actually in the fund.
Well, you can't ever spend, we had, you really,
I mean, if we put a
no, you can't.
proposed number on it, of $6,000.
You can't spend the $6,000 if there's only $2,000 in the fund.
Right.
We'll remind people that there was a time when people did spend more than was in the fund, and those became revenue deficits on our free cash. And if somebody spends more than is in a revolving fund, it actually gets docked from your free cash. So when I was first on city council, I think Mary Ann LaBarge may remember this, we had some revolving funds at Smith location that were in the neighborhood to pretty high numbers, and they were getting docked out of our free cash. And we finally just wiped out the deficit with free cash, because they never were going to get balanced. So, since those days, Chris and Joyce and Susan with all her revolving funds were been really careful. Okay, so
Or free cash, make it zero.
it's going to probably be very close to zero. Yeah,
So you have to be so careful on how you put your language in there.
that's right. Going into next year, the way the free cash is going to be replenished is through revenue, money coming in over budget, not expenditures under budget, for two reasons. One is this cleanup, but the second is truing up the payroll to bring it to accrual as opposed to full accrual, which meant we need to pick up 9 days in everybody's payroll that we hadn't budgeted.
It's a lot.
That would have, all those 9 days would have flowed to free cash that we squeezed out of everybody, right? So this actually would not have been a terrible year for free cash if we hadn't had to do those 9 days. But we have to do that, so. Okay? Any other questions about FY12? And again, I don't know where that 4,000 number came from, but I'm solid on that 1,200. If anybody wants to come look at the spreadsheet, I'm happy to show you. I will not make it a public document because it's got plate numbers on it. Okay? So,
About the Committee on Disabilities, they were so happy when they got $4,000.
I want to apologize, I have to get a kid to a school play, so.
Have fun.
Well, motion to adjourn probably isn't
Report,
right.
I think so.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Texted.